Please stand for the pledge. I'm calling the meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Begin with the roll call. And before I do the roll call, just remember if you have a cell phone, please silence it or turn it off so that we don't get interrupted. Roll call begins with myself. I am here, Commissioner Cos, and Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Culberson.
Here.
Commissioner Smith. Here. We are all present and accounted for. We do not have anyone signed up for public comment on agenda items, so we're going to move on to administrative business. I will start with Mr. Lothry. Do you have anything for us today?
Commissioners, I do have something I wanted to go over. It's going to take a little longer than normal. Just want to apologize in advance. Over the last 4 or 5 days, I guess, there's been a lot of information and misinformation maybe circulated via social media and otherwise about a potential agreement with the county, CoreCivic, and ICE. First of all, I want to give a little background about CoreCivic. CoreCivic has been a corporate member of Leavenworth and Leavenworth County since 1992. I went back and did a little checking, and in the time that they've been open in Leavenworth County, they've paid in excess of $25 million in real and personal property taxes. During the time they were open, they had somewhere between 300 and 400 employees at that facility as well. And what they are is a privately ran prison, and they were a detainee facility for the Federal Marshal Service. They held probably what would be considered the worst of the worst when it came to criminals. These are federally charged criminals, not state but federal, that were held while they were being waiting for their trials. So they were usually there for somewhere around 6 months or so, but the worst of the worst. And when Joe Biden took office, President Joe Biden, he signed an executive order that effectively closed all private prisons and put CoreCivic out of business in Leavenworth County. Again, great corporate partner for the county since 1992, and in 2021 that ended via the stroke of a pen. So since that time, the property taxes on the facility have dropped approximately 40% and will continue to drop because they're not open. Therefore, the value of the property goes down each year. Which is a huge hit to all taxing entities because they paid about $1 million a year in property taxes total while they were open. And we lost the jobs that were also part of that, which again, 350 to 400 jobs. We lost all of those with the stroke of a pen by our current president when he took office, and almost immediately after taking office. So that's how we got to this point with CoreCivic. Since they closed, CoreCivic has reached out to the county on multiple occasions talking about them trying to get their facility back open, get the jobs back in the market. And they've been looking for any opportunity they could, including detaining federal prisoners again through the Marshal Service or, in this case, ICE. We have not had an agreement. There's been a lot of talk. They've never been able to get to the point with any of the federal agencies to where there would be something for the county to actually consider. I think that may have changed here in the last month, really probably 2 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, they believe they are at a point where ICE and them are negotiating to see if this can happen, to reopen the facility and be an ICE detention facility. It is a prison that has razor wire, it has fences. It has bars on the windows. It is a prison. Let's not make any mistake about what the facility is. It's a prison, and they're trying to reopen it and use it to house these ICE detainees. So why would the county need to be involved in this? And typically, we wouldn't be. This is a private agency contracting with the federal government. However, because of the executive order, it severely limits the ability for a private prison like CoreCivic to work directly with the federal government. So they need a intermediary that's a governmental entity like the county to participate so that ICE can contract with the county. So if this moves forward, which there's no guarantee it is, we still do not have any agreements in front of us for consideration. But if it moves forward, the county would be I guess the best way you can term it would be a pass-through. So that CoreCivic will run the prison, will handle the day-to-day functions and the detention and the transportation, and the federal government via ICE will pay the bill. They'll pay the bill to the county, and then the county will reimburse CoreCivic for their portion, and the county gets to retain a administrative fee that's based on bed count. So that's why the county would need to be involved in any kind of agreement if it moves forward. And again, we are still not at that point where there's anything for this county commission to consider. When that does happen, if it happens, it will be on a public agenda item, and you all will discuss it in public, and you will vote on it in public. There's nothing secretive about the process. It's just the process, and that's how we handle all of our business. It's done in public. So why would the county even contemplate doing something like this? Well, first of all, with the county involved, we have the ability then to control some of the narrative and some of the operations. Because we would be involved, we would have the ability to back out of any agreement with a 60-day notice. That's what we are contemplating. And if that were the case, if something was going on that the county commission did not like, they could make a vote to cancel an agreement if we entered into one with a 60-day notice. Why else would the county be interested? Well, for one, the administrative fees are going to be somewhere between $600,000 to $800,000 based on agreements that they have in place in other communities across the nation, because this is not the first time something like this is opened.
Per year.
Per year. That is an annual fee. That is not taxes. That's a fee that we collect, an administrative fee that we collect. So somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 a year, dependent upon how many beds are filled at any given time out there. The reopening the facility puts CoreCivic in a place to create, because the jobs were already lost, it creates 350 new jobs for the county. What does that mean for us? Well, that's somewhere between $25 to $30 million in payroll each year. And according to our economic development director, that generates an additional, on top of that payroll, an additional $40 to $48 million in economic impact to the communities where those jobs are created. So that's pretty significant. The facility itself, CoreCivic, has committed to putting up to, I think it's a little over $20 million in improvements into the facility. I think we've heard before, when it was the Marshall's facility, that it had maybe aged a little bit and was getting in the need of some maintenance, and they're committing to doing that, which also generates additional construction jobs for the next year and a half while they do that, if this all moves forward, and also generates somewhere around $465,000 in sales tax just for during the construction cycle. Most importantly, though, it keeps that building in use instead of becoming really an eyesore and not maintained. It keeps it on the tax rolls. By investing additional money into it, it increases the value, which puts it even higher on the tax rolls than it was before it closed. So again, that's about $1 million plus in property tax they pay each year to local taxing entities, which would be another $350,000 or so for the county, probably $350,000 for the city of Leavenworth, and probably somewhere around $600,000 a year once they get all the remodeling done for the school district. So pretty impactful to local taxing entities when you have a business like this that's on the taxes. And I think probably monthly we discuss the importance of having more commercial business on the tax rolls to help alleviate residential property tax. So these are some of the reasons why the county would be interested in at least listening to what they have to propose. So what does it look like if they would go forward? What would this look like? They are contemplating holding somewhere between 500 and 950 detainees at the facility. There'd be no children. It's just single adults. It would be both men and women. The adults are people who have been detained throughout the Midwest. These are not folks who are coming across the border, getting on a bus and landing in Leavenworth. These are folks who are already in the Midwest who, for whatever reason, were detained by ICE. And then these folks, while they're being detained, they're here during the removal process. These are not people who are trying to legally immigrate or immigrate into the United States. These are people who are being detained for removal. They're in the removal process. That means they are likely within 90 days of going back to the home they came from. If for whatever reason any of the detainees are granted a release, they can only be released back through the local ICE hub, which is in Kansas City. I believe it's Kansas City, Missouri. I looked yesterday. I think that's where the federal offices are at. So they would not be released back into the city of Leavenworth or Leavenworth County. And also, one of the rumors that was out on Facebook that I hate to even address it because I don't want to give it any credibility. It's completely and totally ridiculous. And that is that these folks are going to receive $2,100 a day in a cell phone. These are not immigrants. They're not refugees. They are detainees. They are in prison. This is a prison facility. They may not like to call it prison anymore because that might hurt someone's feelings, but it is a prison. Drive by it. You can see you're not out there having a picnic. So that's about the best I can do to address what I've seen so far via social media. Typically, I wouldn't even have done that because it's not an agenda item, and it may never be an agenda item. But because of the false narratives that are out there, I just wanted to kind of put out what we know. And this is what we know today. As we know more, we will share that as well. Any questions that I can?
Thank you. Any questions?
Man, good update, Mark. Thank you. People have been wanting to know, so I'm glad you got that out.
Commissioner Stevens?
I thought we already voted on it, so we read it on Facebook.
Yeah, that's what I read.
I do have a couple questions for you. When we made the decision dealing with the previous proposal with CoreCivic, when this first came about, which was dealing with a different part of the government, they wanted to sort of do the same type of arrangement, and we decided not to. I believe the commissioners voted on that, that we would not do that. Can you compare and contrast the difference between this proposal and the proposal we had on the table last time?
Well, again, there was no agreement last time. It was just they asked if we would basically support. And what they wanted was that the county actually take over the facility and run it. The employees would be employees of the county. And we would do the daily operations, but they would basically, CoreCivic would be an advisor. And the board at that time said, no way, we are not going to operate a prison facility for federal detainees. And at that time, they were, again, the Marshal Service detainees, which are the hardened criminals. So we had no interest in that, and that would not even be something we would contemplate today, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, a second question. When we visited last week, we talked about, when I talked to you in your office, we visited about the Safe Release Act, and my understanding was under that Safe Release Act that prisoners would be sent to the location where they were detained to be released. That was my understanding of what you told me. And it sounds like from what you're saying now is that they would be released at the local hub. Is that which is the correct?
So, I have asked ICE for a specific in writing how that operates. My understanding is, via the phone conversation I had, that these detainees are released back to where they were detained. So if it would be Chicago or St. Louis or something like that, they would go back to there. If they were released locally, so they were detained locally or released locally, it would be through the office in Kansas City, Missouri, the federal ICE office there. I've asked for that in writing. When I look at the prison release standards for federal prisoners, that's the language that's in there, is that they are released to the local hub, which would be the ICE hub in Kansas City. So that's what I know for certain. I've asked for them to confirm that in writing. So again, that's how it was explained via phone. I've asked for it in writing.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would like to propose a motion on this.
I don't think we're in a position right now to do that, so you
Well,
can
I'm going to go ahead and propose that Leavenworth County will not, motion will be that Leavenworth County will not become involved with any contractual arrangement with ICE, the Immigration, Naturalization, and Customs Service, for the purpose of serving as a party to an agreement or being an intermediary to hold illegal immigrants or other immigrants for any purpose at this time. And that's number one. Number two, no additional staff time of county staff will be devoted to negotiating such an agreement.
Motion, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it for discussion.
Okay.
Does this need to be on the agenda for us to legally vote on this?
I believe it should be. I mean, I don't think it has to be, but I think that it's.
Oddly enough, there is no state requirement that you even have an agenda.
Okay.
However, there is an Attorney General's opinion. I think it's very well written, and it's sage advice that if you do have agendas that you publish, that you should more or less stick with them, and that if the public is given the anticipation that actions taken by this board will be placed on your agenda, they should be placed on a published and publicly distributed agenda.
Madam Chair, thank you for a second. Whether I support it or not is something that I'd like to see more information. I also, and this is not telling you I'm going to vote one way or the other. We're in a fact-finding thing. I also want to get the information that we're required, and I also want to make sure that the people that want to hear about this and hear what we're doing or have a chance to participate in this, as Mark was saying, so they can give us their thoughts. I've got many thoughts from folks in my district and throughout the county, but I won't support it now, Mike, just because I want to hear the information. You can't make a decision when you don't have the facts in front of you. Now, this is my opinion. Once the facts are in front of me, I'll take a look at it. I may vote no, I may vote yes, but I want to see what the county administrator is going to bring in front of us so as to talk about, and I want to hear more input from the public.
From the very beginning on this, I've been in opposition, and so I'm not going to support this in any way, and I just think I don't want to see us go down this road of wasting weeks of staff time, having to hear from people, when I think this is totally a bad idea. And we could go through every piece of it, but I don't even need to get to the next stage from what I know of what they're trying to do. We have a federal government trying to work around their own policy and use the county to do that.
To pass the whole pass-through thing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of the federal government admitting they made a mistake.
Right.
And owning it. But anyways. Well, like I said, I never have not supported this just because, I mean, we run off a sand pit, but then we would want this. So that's my take on it. I'd rather have a sand pit than this.
And in fact, I had one other thing too. Just because I want the information does by no means think I believe in the administration in D.C. right now. It's been very obvious to me with the open borders, with the pipeline that was canceled, with people that are receiving funds, money, with people who haven't worked 2 and 3 jobs to try to make their property tax, with the with everything that's happened, and people that don't want to work but are receiving checks that are eligible. This is by no means saying I don't support what you're saying, Mike. I just want to see more information in front of me.
I do have a question for legal counsel, and this is a question I visited with a constituent. If we have 950 folks housed there, and then a new commission would come in, or we would decide we want to exercise the termination clause, and ICE would say at that point, after we told them we're going to exercise our termination clause, ICE said we have nowhere else to send these folks. We're going to go to federal court and have you enjoined from releasing from getting out of your contract until we find a location for these people to go. Is that a potential type of litigation we could get into?
Well, Commissioners, I presume from the details of your questions, your constituent may have more knowledge on this topic than, quite frankly, I do. So you may want to ask them.
Well,
anything's an eventuality. Now, I will tell you that the goal of your staff in examining this very preliminary, and I want to emphasize that, very preliminary proposal, is to offer as many protections to the county and the citizens of Leavenworth County as we can do. We've obtained agreements that are similar from various other jurisdictions throughout the United States. I'll just suggest to you that the initial 3 to 4 page proposal that CoreCivic did present as preliminary discussion has been responded to with a substantially revised agreement that would, I think, afford the Leavenworth County significant protections. As far as what could happen in the future, that's really, Commissioner, I can't speculate for you, but yes, anybody can file in U.S. District Court if they have venue and jurisdiction, and anybody can ask for appropriate relief. Whether it would be granted or not, I can't answer that.
Well, I mean, if they didn't have, they're struggling for beds for these folks. So if there was no other place to send them, I'm assuming that a federal district court would say you cannot get out of your contract. But I don't know. It's conjecture.
It is exactly that, Commissioner. And I'm not saying that that's not a potential possibility, because it's panoply of potential possibilities is endless. However, the goal, if this were to move forward at all, we haven't received a response back from CoreCivic, and I will tell you, if they're not inclined to accept the terms that we've responded to, it's much as the prior proposal to you was a non-starter, this one might be. However, as I believe it's been outlined to you, there are enough positive economic repercussions, benefits to this county, that your staff is looking at it, provided that we don't become the owner of the facility, that we don't have employees, county employees working there, and that we are afforded the maximum amount of protections that can be granted to us. But as far as making something foolproof, that's just not possible.
So, and can you, Mark, talk about the timeline? What kind of a timeline are we on to make this decision?
Well, right now, since we don't have any agreement, we're really not a timeline. I think that budgetarily, the federal government's budget restarts in October, so I would assume if anything were to come forward, it would be before October 1st.
And there's talk of a possible shutdown, too.
Yeah.
And, Madam Chair, I just had another, because we're doing hypotheticals. So, hypothetically, if the federal government could purchase this property from CoreCivic if they were agreed to sell it to it, and then the federal government could just run it, correct?
Commissioner Smith, the federal government could purchase it. The federal government could exercise its right of eminent domain and acquire it unilaterally. And in that case, it would be at the same status as the United States Penitentiary to our north, which is completely outside of your jurisdiction.
And no taxes.
And no tax rules.
That's hypothetical.
That's the hypothetical. Okay. Any other questions?
Not on this subject.
I just think that before we say no to a $2 million possible deal to save people tax dollars, we need a lot more information, even though I'm 100% against us becoming a border town and anything I can do to prevent that from happening. I personally would need a lot of assurances that that would not happen, but I think this is very preliminary, and before we just say no to $2 million a year to offset people's taxes, we need to look into this further, not just say no right out of the gate. So
I agree. It's my thoughts, Jeff.
And, you know, I just think it's really unfortunate that we were put in the position that we've been put in because we did not have information that was sufficient to even begin to debate or have conversations about what could be the negative or positive consequences for making a decision like that, which we spent plenty of time on when we were talking with CoreCivic the last time around. There was a lot of discussion and the ability to have those discussions, but because an individual decided that they wanted to take upon themselves to take the lead and not allow the county to do their job, we're sitting here today with a motion before us where we have not even had the opportunity to look at the information, to study the information, to know what is even being presented to us. And I think that's extremely unfortunate. And so...
And it's a shame it's coming from people that are in leadership roles.
Yes.
They should at least wait and let us know. We don't know the question or the answer because we have not seen anything. It's just that simple, folks. And some of the emails I've been getting, whether they're nice or threatening, which the threatening ones I don't pay attention to, but they're ones that people are asking me good questions, and I have a chance to get back with them, and I say, oh, you don't know, we don't know anything except what you just heard. And we didn't know that a few days ago. So, folks, let us have a chance to at least see this. I concur with Commissioner Culberson. It's going to take a lot for me to support something like this, but I at least want to be able to study the information so I can make an intelligent decision on it.
Exactly. So... That's
Call for the vote.
all right. I will call the roll, beginning with myself. What was the motion was for us to not entertain or consider.
Continue.
You want me to read it again?
Yes, please.
Lebanon County will not become involved with any contractual arrangement with ICE, Immigration, Naturalization, and Customs Service for the purpose of serving as a third-party intermediary or to an agreement to hold illegal immigrants or other immigrants for any purpose at this time, or serving as a third-party intermediary for such services. And number 2, no additional county staff time will be devoted to negotiating such an agreement.
Do those two motions need to be separate, or can they be put together,
That's
Counselor?
subsection 2 of the...
Commissioner, I think for your purposes, you can consider them as one motion.
Okay. Well, then I vote no to the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
no.
No.
Okay. Motion fails. 3-2. Okay. Any other administrative business, Mr. Lothry? Okay. Anything that the
Madam Chair, I do have one, well, maybe two. The commissioners had a chance to look at Representative Johnson's legislation on the water deal to make some notes and changes. Okay.
You wanted to make a little change to it.
Yeah, I think it just needs to spell out just road project.
Tweak it a little bit, that's what you were talking about.
Yeah. So everybody had a chance to do that?
I agree with you.
Okay. Do we need to gather this and give it to the county councilor maybe to
Present it.
yeah.
That's good. He needs more work.
Well,
Like always, we don't like to vote on
well,
things.
he was involved with the very first
Yeah,
one.
I agree,
First
Doug.
time.
Commissioners, I think I'm familiar with your topic, and that would be a very simple amendment to the proposed language. I'd be happy to work on that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll get it back to Representative Johnson. All right. I just appreciate him
Yes, it
being so
was-
quick on it.
Absolutely.
And then just wanted to acknowledge Public Works Director Bill Knoll for congratulate him on getting $2 million for the bridges down south. We need to thank the governor and KDOT for recognizing Leavenworth County. It probably doesn't hurt that there's a battery plant across the river, but nevertheless, these
$2 million.
are bridges
Yep.
we were going to have to replace anyways.
That's right.
So any funding we can get from the state is I appreciate it. Or any grants or funding we can get, it just saves the local taxpayers. Because our infrastructure needs updated.
Bad. I concur with
The
you.
cost of doing it now
It's not going down.
is
30% higher.
disagree with you on that, but we'll go with 30%.
Last year, let's put it like that.
But anyway, I just want to, recognize Bill Knoll for
Yes.
all of his hard work and what he does. I mean, commissioners, we may allow him to apply for these grants, but he's the one doing the work. So just want to put credit where credit's due.
Very
That's all I
good.
have.
Anyone else have
I don't have
anything?
anything. Jeff?
If not, we will move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda before we?
If not, Madam Chair, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Aye. I didn't hear Mike.
I didn't hear Mike either.
Yeah.
I said aye.
You
I said
did.
it quietly.
Okay. You quiet, Mike? Come on.
It's, I got allergies today.
Well, they are
Okay.
kind of tough, aren't they?
We have nothing for formal board action today, so we're going to move on down to presentations and discussions. And there was nothing that we needed from Jamie, correct? Because this,
Work session.
the work session, right, just for
Work
that,
session.
right? Okay. All right, presentations and discussions. I'll go ahead and start with
I don't have anything holiday weekend.
Commissioner
have
Steve.
anything
Do you
till
have
next
anything?
Well, and Commissioner Culberson was on it. We were on the KAC Legislative Committee and talking about LAVTR and the constitutional amendment, and they debated it for about close to 2 hours, and it got tabled, and we're going to be debating it again on the 27th.
Table.
Yeah.
And
Well, it'll be a good thing if they get on board. It'll be a really good thing.
Okay, and then of course the conference is in December,
Yeah,
so I plan on attending that. Is anyone else going?
I'm going.
You're going? All right. We can deal with that because that's a pretty productive time right before the legislature goes in session.
And tomorrow night is the Property Tax Task Force, and Senator Tyson and Senator Gossage are going to be attending. So,
I got a water board meeting.
Commissioner Culberson, did you have anything?
no, I was just going to talk about that KC Legislative Policy Committee that we attended. The thing that surprised me out of that meeting was the opposition in that committee on the 4% max tax increase or valuation increase. I was surprised how much opposition there was to
Is that
that.
right?
I thought that would be pretty
No-brainer,
simple
yeah.
legislation to get passed, but
And
it
There's a
looks
lack of
like it might not
understanding.
be.
Well, what was the?
They just think it would put us back in a reappraisal situation like we were in 1990 when people's values weren't updated until they sold the property. So you had people living in $300,000 houses that paid $30,000 for it 50 years ago that were still on the tax roll in 1990 for $30,000. They somehow feel that we would get back in that situation, even though we tried to explain to them that it would catch up eventually. Say your value went up 12%. You would only go up 4% each year for 3 years. And after 3 years, you would be back to your appraised value. If your value went up a little bit in those 3 years, then yeah, it would take a little longer to catch up. But eventually everybody would catch up. And if the property changed hands, it would immediately go to the fair market value.
Yeah.
So I was, in the very beginning when they first proposed this, I thought the same thing. I was like, that's a bad idea. We'll end up back in a reappraisal situation. But the more I looked at it, it would not do that. So I think it's just more of an education thing, I think. But I just wanted to throw that out there because there was a lot of opposition on that panel about the 4%.
And some of the commissioners actually were commissioners when reappraisal
Yes,
took place.
that's
So that
correct.
shows how much seniority some of them on that panel have,
Yeah.
Well, what about the local ad valorem? Was there, what was?
Oh,
the-
it's pretty unanimous.
Yeah, that had
is that?
no,
No,
that had
I'm
no
just
issues at
wondering
all.
if that
Yeah.
has, if we
Yeah.
have.
So I think
We made an
that's all
impact on
the
that.
time we
Good.
need.
Well, at least we have,
Yeah.
Well, maybe
And I'll
Sunday
have-
before we vote on it, everybody contacts their representative.
Yeah, and I should have that news release rewritten by next week. I would have had it done this week, but I had 400 emails and 100
Is
phone
there
calls.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is there
me
any
too.
other talk about any kind of way of funding operations other than property tax? Has anybody even looked at any?
I brought
income tax,
I brought up the
sales
income tax thing, and that gets shot down too because they're worried about it being an added tax. So they would have
Well,
to feel.
it depends on how they
Write
write
it
the
up,
law.
yeah.
If they write the
Yes.
law that says 100% will
Yes.
be used for property tax,
It can
not
be done.
funding other little things they want to do.
I think they're afraid that if you get the foot in the door, then it might get changed. you
Yeah.
know.
And then it would just
Yeah, I
end up
know,
being an
but-
added tax. I get it. I understand their
I understand their concern too,
But you can
if
build
you
it-
would pass a law that says this can only be used for that.
Yeah.
Of course, local ad valorem was that too, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess the Kansas League of Municipalities is making the LAVTR a priority.
Yeah.
I did understand and hear that.
Yeah.
So.
Spoke to them last week. They absolutely.
Well, I
are.
think the December meeting will be,
Interesting.
well, and it's also right before the session starts, so I think we'll have a pretty good take on what's going to be supported.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Chairperson, I just have one. A couple of us had the fortune to attend the Lebanon County Veterans Treatment Court yesterday with Kansas Supreme Court Justice and a lot of military and a lot of things. And the more I get to know about that and see that, Todd Thompson, and the more I get to see and learn about that, that is such a positive thing. But I don't think there's enough credit going out for all the people that have been involved, that names weren't mentioned on that, and in the county helping fund that office over there. But some of the things we've done, Senator Moran was there speaking. Folks, that's just a good thing, and it was a privilege for me to be able to attend that.
I'm glad you made it because I couldn't make it after the holiday weekend.
I understand.
Wasn't able to make it either, so
That's all right.
appreciated. Okay. Well, if not, I will entertain a motion to
I
adjourn.
move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion
Oh,
second. Well,
did you have somebody for public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I almost forgot. Mr. Clem, please come forward. I just about let that go without.
Hold on.
You were so quiet.
Give me 5 seconds to apologize. My apology shouldn't cost seconds. I want to apologize for being here because I promised you I wouldn't be back. So,
But we want you to come.
no, you don't want me to come because I don't know. But now, you ready?
Ready.
Sounds good. I already explained to John that there wasn't an argument here on the 31st or the 30th, or when you had your meeting between the two of you. That was not an argument. I explained to him what that was. I'm not going to say it for the public. But Commissioner Doug Smith and Mike Stephen began their conversations. I thought it was interesting. Riverside, they got 30,000, and Sparrow Women's, they're getting 5. The museums get 50,000. If you go on down the line, Doug did a motion to eliminate funding for the 2. Who voted against it? That's fine. Riverside Resources is a nonprofit organization in Leavenworth that provides services to adults with intellectual and development disabilities. There isn't an adult that doesn't have any of those problems, I'm sure. But the Sparrow Women's provides for pregnant women. 60,000 and 5,000 previously. They received funding from the county, the Leavenworth Museums. Do the Leavenworth Museums, does anybody outside deserve any money for what your job is to do? The roads, the bridges, and take care of your employees, and a county business. None of that is county business. I suggested years ago to the city about the steamship Arabia, and the city manager met with, he said, a couple individuals, and they said, there's no collateral, it's not anything intelligent, worthwhile doing. Anything that is formed should pay for itself. We're now working on, which I brought up about 10 years ago, or whenever the sale came up, about the Lansing Museum, and now it becomes sort of political. You have 2 individuals, and we have a meeting on the 25th. That should be supportive by itself. The federal pen coming up, I don't know if the city said something on that. It's amazing how they operate later. but they should be museums, and we should shut down Alcatraz because of the business we're going to have. Public may not understand these values like the history of Leavenworth. I'm a history of Leavenworth person. I totally function with all the museums, not just one. We just paid off the debt by a great donor who paid $50,000. The debt's gone, and that's what happens at the Parker. The other two, they're just there. Stephen opened the budget back up for cutting, so you need to own it, Mike. And, that was just miscellaneous garbage. Doug said he wants to cut all funding. Somebody else mentioned, and I think it was Mike, about having a committee. Now, I mentioned that to one of the individuals here. There should be a committee to study any money that you're going to give, especially the museums. Museums, they don't go out and get 3 estimates. They deal with friends. And that's not the way you do it. You're giving money. If you were spending the money, you would go out and get bids. That's what it should be. They present that to the board, and every other institution needs to do the same thing. You need to have an overall committee and get out of this giving money to people. One of the things just came up is big brothers and big sisters, okay? Because it was special money from Joe Biden, okay? Special money, it's $180,000, $60,000 a year. Now, who's going to take over the bill after that? Yep. We're expected to take it over. That isn't the way the system should work, and it's been done consistently. So I thank you for your time. I thought it was a good meeting. I think you need to form that committee and get it done and make sure there's no somebody that supports one thing. They have to support them all because they're all interesting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
We adjourn.
Second.
Motion second. Begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.